This week on the 77% Street Debate.
I have been to mortuaries, to funerals. I have seen each and every family mourning and crying out for their child.
You live in fear. You have to be off mode. That is something we did not expect to happen in our country.
Our future is on the line. Our present is on the line. So we have to come and say we are not going to watch as you do whatever you want.
Most of us didn't even know our MCAs, our MPs. But because of that finance bill, because of the protests, we're all involved.
Hello and welcome back to the 77% Street Debate. This week we are back in my hometown, Kenya's capital, Nairobi. And these streets were shaken on the 25th of June 2024 when young people angered by a controversial finance bill breached the gates of Parliament. And a year later we are here to ask if their demands were met, if they were indeed worth it. Well, who better to answer those questions for me than some fellow Kenyans? And before we even begin, let me just start by reading a temperature in the room here or outside. How many people attended the protest last year on 25th of June? Let's see by show of hands. So let's start with you, Hanifa, because you've sort of become, post the protest, one of the faces of this movement. But before we continue, just give us a quick look at why the protest happened in the first place.
I think the finance bill was a catalyst. It was anger, bitterness simmered for years and years, inequality, corruption. It was just everything combined that blew up.
Yeah.
Finance bill was a catalyst, and I would like to term it as a youthquake.
A youthquake. So Hanifa describing it here as sort of the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. But Wanjera, I know you've been an activist for many years, and the issues that Hanifa is mentioning, they didn't start last year. So what is it that broke that camel's back?
I agree that it is water that has been boiling for a long time, and the finance bill was just, we've had enough. Now we've got to rise up and say that enough is enough. Young people of this country were rising up against bad leadership, corruption, the economic situation, the high cost of living at the face of opulence, at the political class, at the face of we don't care, we're just going to do whatever we want. And the young people are saying, no, our future is on the line. Our present is on the line. So we have to come and say we are not going to watch as you do whatever you want. Well, our future deteriorates. Well, our present is unbearable. Mm-hmm. So I think people came to the streets to assert the sovereignty of the Kenyan people.
Okay, so because we brought up the economy twice, let me come to the economist. Just give us some hard data. What was the state of the economy then, and how does it compare to the way things are now?
Well, I would say there's big tension that was there last year. The International Monetary Fund requesting Kenya to implement some items in its bill. The same tension still exists up to today. So there's really not so much that has changed. But what we notice now, what the government has been trying to do is to tone down the targeted tax areas that were affecting individuals to try and focus more on the corporate. But the challenge still remains because even if you target business, it's business that needs to give the youth jobs.
Okay, yeah. So you say that not much has changed, but the gentleman standing next to you might have a different opinion. Nathaniel, how would you rate the performance of the government between the time of the protests and now? Has much changed?
I want to applaud the young people because I'm a young person as well for coming out unanimously in large numbers to express what is constitutionally their right to question and be involved in the government. It is part of the Constitution of Kenya under Article 35 on the access of information that government should be able to give information for decision making. So secondly, I am not the person who is capacitated to rate government performance. Only the young people and the citizens can tell us how we are performing. Mm-hmm. And we will be able to know whether we are performing well or not in the next election and in the continuous process of engagement through the governance processes. For example, the budget-making process, the Finance Bill 2025. So it is the people who need to tell us what we are doing and whether we are doing the correct thing or not.
Okay, so let me ask the people, do you think much has improved since 2024 in June? You know, the things that you were agitating for. Has the economy improved by show of hands? Yes? Has the state of politics improved? Let's see. Okay. Moses, you raised your hand here. You're a member of the clergy. You already have an opinion for me.
I wanted to take issue with the statement about waiting until 2027 for us to know just how well or how badly off the government has performed.
Okay, so
Because-
2027 for our global audience is when the next election of Kenya is slated
Correct.
for. Yeah.
Correct. And the reason I state that is because the financial process that we're talking about right here, the financial year, is an annual process. Therefore, we need to have an annual process of analysis for the government as to how well or how badly they're performing.
I wonder what you think about that. You're a lawyer, but you underwent something very critical after the protest. We'll talk about that in a second. But do you think much has changed since those protests?
Not really. Nothing has changed. Maybe to the worst, because we still see politicians dishing out money, especially the president and the deputy president, dishing millions of Kenya shillings in churches. And at the same time, going back to the political, or rather the tribal cocoons and mobilizing people through tribal lines. At the same time, we have had some of the things that we called out for, like changing the health funding system. And to date, nothing is actually working. At the same time, we don't have vaccines in the hospitals for newborns. So our newborns are not able to be vaccinated, yet the government is allocating 600 million Kenya shillings for MPs, but we don't have medicine in the hospitals. We do not have allocation for, budgetary allocation for school fees. And children are now not going to, they do not know whether or not they are going to sit the examination, because really there's no allocation for the examination.
Yeah. Then let me come back to Nathaniel here, because it was his point and his suggestion that things are improving. Yeah. So when you hear this, what do you have to say? By the way, you're not in government. You just happen to advocate for the party that's ruling the country right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So first of all, I will admit from Finance Bill 2024, there was no adequate communication from the part of government in terms of what are the proposals in the Finance Bill 2024. This led to misinformation in some of the proposals and disinformation in some of those proposals.
But let's bring us to the present tense, Nathaniel, because there's been a year since these things should have happened. In the meantime, are they communicating the things that they're doing as is being claimed that they're not, or they're actually not doing anything?
So first of all, I've taken note of what Joshua, my colleague here, said on the panel regarding the issue of the social health insurance. Secondly, the social health insurance initially had a lot of teething problems. Right now, it is working for the inpatient, and we removed the outpatient part of the social health insurance. The inpatient is working smoothly.
Okay, let me come back to Hanifa, because it sounds to me, listening to all of you, that we're back where we were a year ago in terms of the things that you're telling me are wrong with the country. So what did the protests achieve?
I think one of the biggest achievement of the protest were people recognizing their voice. It is draining, of course, but it has showed us the way. I am more patriotic. I am more cautious of things politically. And I am so brave now. We can stand up to anything and anyone.
Okay, brave can stand up to anything and anyone. Joshua, it certainly must not have felt like that for you after the protests when you were mysteriously abducted. Please tell us how that happened.
Yeah, a day after the 25th of June, where we breached Parliament, I received calls from unknown people. And the language was that you are seen somewhere and these guys are coming for you. So wherever you are, leave. And I stayed in their hands for 2 days. But of course, during which time they could come for me in a room where they had thrown me into, beating me and asking me questions with regards to the Finance Bill 2024, and asking me why I was involved in the protest and why I was mobilizing young people to go to the streets, and why, I don't know who told them, I at some point paid for some young people some fare to go to town using a matatu, and how we were financing the printing of T-shirts, banners, and everything that we were using. And I really didn't have any other answer from God knows where that would satisfy them. And so when the answers they needed in their minds were not coming through, then they could beat me and hit me, and that continued intermittently about 4 or 5 times. But ultimately they threw me into some river, about 100 kilometers from the Nairobi where they picked me up. So that was it for me, and I think when I speak about this, it gets very personal for me, and that's why, as Anifa said, it has changed me completely. I used to be a very diplomatic, calm, reserved person, and all that, but right now I think The street language has got into me very perfectly well, and I think I identify more with the Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote that streets, or rather protest, is the language of the unheard.
Yeah.
So that
Okay.
then if no one is going to implement anything we are speaking about, we are going to go to the streets for that to be implemented.
So it's very combative, one might even say confrontational language that we're hearing from Joshua, and one might agree, there's a reason for this. But coming from the Kenya Human Rights Commission, he's not the only one, right? What does the data show about the number of people who were abducted and the number of people who were killed during that time?
Yes, huge numbers. The Missing Voices report that was released a few months ago indicate that that grew by about 145% from 2019 when that documentation started. That is a worrying trend, and particularly the 2024 finance bill protests really resulted in the killings and also enforced disappearances of these people, which is very, very sad. And as we speak about this, I think one of the things that we all need to note is that the Gen Z protests really led to the rising of youth activism, and that is what we are seeing right now.
All right, let me invite Kelvin. Please join me at the front here. He's wearing the Kenyan flag and a very democratic or patriotic message on his T-shirt. And I'm very surprised because your brother was killed by people who are wearing the same flag. How do you feel about that?
It's feeling dehuman. It's irony because we must protect our country and the government needs to protect its citizen, but the government ends up killing us. When we say things are not well, we end up being killed, silenced.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Brian, your late brother, and what happened to him.
Brian was a very hardworking person, hardworking boy, was my young brother. So Brian went to the street to demonstrate, to say that the finance bill is not what Kenyans want. He went to the street at around 4:30 because he didn't start the protest early in the morning. In fact, I'm the one who went early to the streets of Narok to demonstrate. Then he came later, but around 30 minutes after, he was shot dead.
Yeah. Now, when we spoke on the phone as we were preparing for this street debate, I asked you if the police have been in touch, and you told me that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, has been in touch with you. Did you know that they've listed your brother's name as one of the cases that's already been investigated?
I received a phone call from my aunt that IPOA wants the number of the witness to witness what happened. So the witness has refused to come out to witness, fearing of his life and danger. But also he was offered a job. So you see, the government, it knows what it's doing because he's a witness, then he's given a job so that he can do what, he can be silent.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to let our audience know that we did invite the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, but unfortunately they weren't able to make it. But we did speak to them later, and this is what they had to say.
This particular question about Gen Z, we have 60 cases of death reported. Some of the killings were people who were running away and they were shot in the back, some of the victims. You will see some protests where people are shot in the head. It looks like a targeted attack. And so we feel that there must be a much more better management of the public order and protests by the police. When we hear IPOA say we have completed a case, it means they have taken statements from all involved people, including the police officers who are affected or who are the ones who did the shooting. And then now we send the file to the DPP. So, it's up to the DPP to do whatever he needs to do on the prosecution.
Kelvin, by the way, thank you so much for sharing your story. But Wanjera, long before the protests, you've heard about police brutality and incidences working with people on the ground, and evidently nothing's changed or nothing seems to have.
I think it's a very sad reality that the Finance Bill 2024 actually brought out to the fore for all Kenyans to see that extrajudicial killings have been a reality, especially in the informal settlements of this country that have been going on for years. That every other regime that has come, it's been extrajudicial killings. And 2024 made it a national discussion. Why is it that our police kill the young people of this country. We have documented so many cases with the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. We have gone to court. Not a single case has gotten justice. So we are saying that as young people, as people from informal settlements, as youths of this country, we are getting our own agency in dictating the kind of politics that run our country. And that is why in 2024, there was actually a clear communication to the parliament about this finance bill, how it's going to affect our daily lives. We birthed a new culture of engaging with the politics of this country because we were very aloof. At some point, politics was seen to be something for the older generation. But this time now, we have a new culture in Kenya where the young people are extremely interested in every single thing that happens in the political sphere. For example, when the president took money at a church, we are saying we are going to occupy that church and demand that this money is made to do the right thing.
Okay, so let me hear from the people at the back, starting with Moses here, because the church has been mentioned. And the church really took a beating, or religious institutions during the protests, being accused of allowing politicians to come and spread their agenda to your congregation. How has that changed?
I will say there has been some change and there also hasn't. I have to be honest about this. Churches seem to be a bit split on this. What I know there is that even for those who right now receive politicians, don't do so because they don't know. They're doing so because they're doing it in spite of the people. It is unfortunate, but it is true.
Do you think that the protests changed the relationship between the clergy or religious institutions, the people, and politics?
So in that regard, yes. I am a youth pastor myself. I stood with the young people. We went out on the street for two reasons. One, we wanted to say this is not just a Gen Z issue. This is a Kenyan issue. The Gen Z was simply the face of what Kenyans face.
Okay, let's talk to some of those faces. I'm seeing one of them here nodding furiously as you were speaking. What are you thinking?
I think when we were told to go to the streets, some of us actually have very old parents. So parents who believe that there's some things that we should just let them happen the way they are because it's a process. Like they couldn't understand how, as young as you are, you want to sit down and actually read a finance bill and go out there and fight for your rights, something that they have never done. And I remember every morning going to those streets, my mom and my dad would tell me, please be careful. Please don't die for all those millions of people. Do you think they'll die for you? But I always used to tell them, if we don't do this, we will regret, like you people. We are suffering because of the decisions they made. And I really, really, really thank each and every young person who went, because now all young people they're involved in politics. I'm so sure so many of us didn't even know our resident governors, our home counties, leave Nairobi aside. Let's say about like our up countries, like where we go to our grandparents. Most of us didn't even know our MCAs, our MPs. But because of that finance bill, because of maandamano, because of the protests, we're all involved.
Okay.
As for me, negative. Because since the protest, more abductions has been done like in an accelerating manner. Even those that we could not expect to be kidnapped have been kidnapped. I got involved in taking some to the hospitals later. It wasn't that promising. Others whereby you live in fear. You have to be off mode. Your phones are switched off. The fear that was brought up is not that good. That is something we did not expect to happen in our country.
All right, let me bring back Annette, because she's from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And when you hear something like that, what does it tell you about the potential to affect the political space? If young people are afraid when they go out or tweet something, they might end up in a prison cell.
This is so unfortunate, because I think one of the things I would say that I'm proud of is that Article 1 of the Constitution was put to test. And it really passed the test, because what it did, it allowed for the youth to exercise their democratic right. Unfortunately, what they were met with, which is force and also killings and abduction, is really something that is not warranted. It's a total disregard of the rule of law in this country, which we continue to see happening each single day.
So Hanifa, I have to ask, because Nathaniel earlier said that they are willing to listen as the governing party and they're willing to listen as the government. Do you think young people are willing to listen to government, or have you gotten to a place where it's too antagonistic?
A strong no. For me, the moment these people killed an armed youth, the traces and trails of police brutality. The street is still fresh with their blood. No one had to die. I'm so personal with this, and I don't think there's nothing they can do on their side that is going to amend whatever has happened.
Your voice is shaking right now.
I have been to mortuaries, to funerals. I have seen each and every family mourning and crying out for their child. And there's no justice at all. That bothers me a lot. It is so personal to me. Okay. So when they talk about amending things or doing whatever, if they wanted to, they would have done it.
So as I mentioned, IPOA was not able to make it, but as per their recent data, they have 60 cases that they said were brought in front of them based on the protests last year. And out of those, 22 have been investigated and closed, 36 are still being investigated, and only 2 have made it to court so far. So when you hear about this, Nathaniel, obviously you're not police, you're not government, you can't answer for justice. But on a personal level, you must surely know that there's a disconnect, there's a gap between justice and accountability.
Edith, it breaks my heart to hear and even saw what the young people who were killed in the protest because of a finance bill. Government has appropriated enough resources to the security sector. One of the actions that the president did when he got into power was to disengage the budget of the police from the office of the president, so that the police can be able to make independent decisions when it comes to security matters. So it is the duty of every citizen, especially we the young people, to be able to ask the police the hard questions. What happened to accounting for each and every case that were killed in the finance bill, either by the police or by other criminal elements or any other. And the beauty is that we have a robust judiciary. There are no cases that have evidence that can be able to evade the judiciary of Kenya. It's so independent, and we are proud of the judiciary.
I think Kelvin might have a different opinion there, given that his witness is being intimidated, surely.
That's why I'm saying the IPOA must be able to account for each case. The excesses of the police must be investigated and taken to court to be prosecuted.
All right. So at the beginning, I asked a very simple question. Were the protests worth it? What do the maths say?
Yeah, protest is a form of expression. It's feedback, actually. And in this case, the youth were giving feedback to the politicians, giving feedback to the leadership. And that feedback really shifted the way the Kenya government works somehow. Because you can notice now they're trying to back up their decision with data. And part of feedback goes well beyond the Kenya government. We should not forget that the elephant in the room was the International Monetary Fund, which was arm twisting the Kenya government to put together a bill so as we can pay debt, right? So this feedback from the youth did not just impact Kenya government. It went all the way to Washington, D.C. The World Bank is listening. IMF is listening. So meaning that when you're engaging Kenya and we have a robust, active youth, do not ignore them. Listen to them.
Let me hear some suggestions. What would you want to see for your country moving forward? Some 2 or 3? Hulk?
Yeah, coming from a Gen Z, and I was also a part of the protest, I came to realize that we are fighting a losing battle. I'm saying this because since 2002, since the previous elections, since the time of Moi, we've been doing mandamanos.
Mandamano is protest.
Yeah. It's no longer the time to do protest anymore, because these guys have studied us already. When we have a planned protest, we always end up having goons on the protest as well, attacking people, We'll even have like abductions live on protest, So I feel like right now is the time to up our game.
And what are the suggestions then? What's a way to advocate for your rights?
Yeah, I feel like these days we need to go the digital way.
Some more suggestions? What do you want to see for your country moving forward? Okay.
I've been there in the protest. I will be there in the protest. I will always be there in the protest. So my urge for Kenyans today is that in the finance bill, the products are the ones that they are taxing. Those things that you buy in the supermarket that they are wrapped, those are the things that they have VAT. Why can't we boycott those things first? Stop buying Colgate from the Nini, to me ile makaa. Kama ni unga, stop buying unga from the supermarket. Ask your granny to send you mahindi, and then we go siaga.
Okay, let me first quickly translate for our global audience. He's suggesting that rather than buy toothpaste, you use traditional modes of brushing your teeth, including eating charcoal, and going to the maize mill to have your maize ground as opposed to buying ready-made flour. So I'd like to wrap this conversation up with Hanifa, because I did start with you asking the question of Was it worth it? What was it all for? Very complicated answers from everyone, but if you had to give me one final thought, what would it be?
It was very much worth it. We are not happy about the people that died. It could have been any one of us. There is absolutely nothing the government hasn't done to silence dissent. Nothing. You killed us. You're abducting us. You're taking us to courts. None of it has been able to silence us. So that is the power we got from last year. I'm not the same person I was last year and the person before the protest. It was worth it, and we do it over and over again for a reimagined Kenya.
Okay, so, oh wow.
Viva, comrades, viva! Viva! Down with abduction, down! Down! Down with corruption, down! Down! Down with the killings, down! Down!
Normally, I have something clever to say at the end of these debates, but I think the young people here have made their voices heard pretty clearly. The struggle still continues. People died, people were abducted, but I think the voice here is very loud and clear.